When Wentworth Woodhouse Preservation Trust acquired Wentworth Woodhouse in 2017, we took on a huge and complex site, which had suffered many decades of serious neglect. In addition to the ownership of this enormous site, the Trust also has a legal responsibility to conserve, protect and maintain the many structures on it, which include Grade 1, Grade 2 star and Grade 2 listed buildings. In the Chancellor's Autumn Statement of 2016, the Trust was awarded a £7.6 million emergency grant to help with the most urgent list of repairs. Some of the grant was used to commission over 100 specialist condition reports on various parts of the site, including roofs, drains and the internal features such as the famous marble saloon floor.
Superficially, interior spaces such as the glorious staterooms were in a reasonable state of repair. But the condition reports of the various roof structures across the site revealed that many of them were in a state of near collapse. Water ingress was a major problem, and this had created large areas of wet and dry rot, which had compromised the structural integrity of several roofs.
This building, when we started, 180 buckets spread all over the building, catching water, new place, moving another bucket. So first sort of months was managing that for them to try and plug the leaks. But now, if we didn't do anything for 10 years, the building's watertight. We're never going to lose what's inside now, where before the water ingress was just killing the building from inside really.
In addition to the structural issues, asbestos was found to have been used in several areas, notably the stables, the riding school and in a large part of the cellars. This had to be removed by specialist contractors before any remedial work could begin.
We prioritised work on areas of roof most in danger of collapse. These included the riding school and the bedlam wing here, where new roofing was installed. The chapel was also re-roofed as water ingress was damaging this beautiful decorative ceiling. And temporary supports were installed in the south range of the stables as the canopy there was also failing.
To protect the most historically significant interiors, we re-roofed the entire central section of the mansion which contains the state rooms. This was an enormous undertaking which cost almost £5 million and involved over 700 tons of scaffolding, a temporary roof structure and 14,000 new Westmoreland slates to replace the originals. We also installed 2 public walkways to facilitate access for tours so that visitors could see the work as it progressed.
The whole ethos here at Wentworth Woodhouse is to conserve and protect rather than replace. And fortunately, most of the timber on the original roofs we've mentioned was sound enough to retain, as you can see here in the bedlam wing. We stored all of the original slates so that they can be reused elsewhere on site, and those that are too damaged or too small to be reused are being repurposed and sold to help raise vital funds for future conservation projects.
It was only when we had proper access to the mansion's roof that we could assess the condition of the stonework at that level. This too was in a much worse state than we'd realised, and dangerously so in some cases. Various factors had contributed to this, including lack of maintenance, but also the impact of previously attempted repairs and, in some cases, the original Georgian building methods themselves. In keeping with our conservation ethos, as much original stone as possible was retained. Only the irreparable sections of the urns were recreated using new stone, and indents were widely used to avoid the removal of large areas of stone. Where substantial sections of decayed stone had to be removed for structural reasons, these were often reworked into smaller units that could be employed elsewhere on the building.
So this is an example of one of the old iron cramps we found within the cornice stones. These were essentially installed to stop the cornice shelf slipping off the apex of the portico itself. Obviously you can see from the state of it, it's become ferrous, and the problem with this is it causes the stone to blow and fracture, as you can see behind me here. Now what we've done is carefully stitched these out. These were lined with lead, so it's a very slow process in stitch drilling the lead out to remove these, and they've been replaced with stainless steel and dabs of resin, so they'll be good for another few hundred years. So this is the south cornice. When we originally had the scaffold erected, we could finally get up here and inspect it. We discovered that a lot of the stonework, although the cement repairs were still in very good condition and from the ground looked sound, behind them all of the stone had eroded and was essentially dust. We then scheduled up all of the stonework and that went away to one of our suppliers, Mono Masonry. They then reworked these templates and brought them back in. We've now installed them back into the cornice as sympathetically as possible. So this is Irene, affectionately known as the lady and baby amongst the tradesmen on site. The top half was in 5 pieces, the bottom half had a large split through the centre of it. So essentially down her back, attached to a metal plate that's recessed in her waist, we've taken out an old copper cramp that went from her back down to underneath her bottom and replaced it with stainless steel. That stainless steel is also bolted to the plate within her waist. We're very concerned about the amount of weight that could potentially tip her forward, so this is just helping clamp her down onto that base again.
The work continued during the COVID pandemic and the scaffolding was finally removed at the beginning of 2021.
Obviously with a job of this size, there's a lot that goes on in the background. A lot of liaison with Robert Woodheads themselves as to how we were going to manage it when we come back. There's a lot of conversations with suppliers as to whether we'd be able to get the material.
You'd hardly know that we had been closed down for that period now.
Yeah, and that's testament to the management of Robert Woodheads. So they were brilliant.
One positive thing we achieved by having to close the house to the public during periods of lockdown was the removal of large quantities of asbestos from the cellars here underneath the mansion, a task which would have been almost impossible with our normal visitor flow.
As the scaffolding was removed from the main mansion building, a similar but much smaller scaffold structure was erected around the north pavilion. This allowed us to undertake repairs to the pavilion roof and to repair and replace decayed stonework. Once this was completed, we did the same at the south pavilion. As a result, we've now provided around 60% of the mansion with new roof coverings and protected or conserved large sections of the original building.
As part of the work on the north and south pavilions, we removed both weather vanes. The one to the north was in a good state of repair. It was restored and re-gilded before being repositioned. The weather vane from the south pavilion, however, was in a very derelict state with parts missing, so we used the north weather vane as a template to restore it.
So with the treatment of the weather vane, we first had to remove a lot of the old degraded gold and paint layers. Obviously being up on the top of the roof, it was quite weathered. We applied a base coat paint, which is a yellow ochre colour, which we can then apply the gold size. We have to wait for this to go off to then apply the gold on top. We then brush it off with a really, really soft brush just to get rid of some of the excess gold, and it does create a shinier effect.
The pavilions themselves are pretty much identical from the outside, but they each have a unique feature. The South Pavilion has 2 compass faces which have been completely reconstructed, each with a single hand. An interior mechanism connects the hands to the weather vane itself so that both the weather vane and the compass faces indicate the wind direction. In contrast, the North Pavilion has 2 clock faces, which were recreated as part of the restoration project, as the originals were again too decayed to save.
Meanwhile, inside the mansion, conservation projects have included restoring some of the damage caused by leaking roofs. The work has included the long gallery, here in the panelled room, and in the Earl's bedroom next door, where local apprentices from the nearby village of Thirlston recreated sections of decorative plasterwork destroyed by water ingress. Casts or squeezers were taken from the original decorative plasterwork and fixed back into place with lime mortar in the same way that the original Georgian ceilings had been created. The work here in the Earl's bedroom was done free of charge by a team of craftsmen working in a company owned by a local businessman. You'll see that the second enrichment is more complex and consists of a base plate with 24 separate cones. This base plate is cast from a new rubber mould created from the squeeze taken on site. The pattern for the cone is produced from a spinning mould And from this, new rubber moulds enable Kian to cast cones to fit each of the 3 new base plates. Each cone is then drilled and pinned before being secured in place.
My name's Craig Dixon. I'm the director of Excel Bespoke Plaster. I'm a local lad. I grew up in the village just down the road from Wentworth, so I know the house very well. When I saw that Wentworth was starting to get some kind of works carried out on it, I was keen to be a big part of that. I think it's incredibly important to keep these properties maintained. The craftsmanship that was created is unbelievable, really. So if we lose them, they'll be lost forever, and we do really need to keep them around for everybody else to see.
Our duty to conserve, protect and maintain the Wentworth Woodhouse site is a huge responsibility. The sheer scale of the work required is one of the reasons why literally every penny we raise counts.
Our in-house maintenance team work on everything from making sure 270-year-old doors and shutters work properly to looking after our rainwater goods, conserving their original purpose and aesthetics. And we're incredibly proud that our work conserving and maintaining the building won us the Best Loved Building Award in November 2022 from the Society for the Protection of Ancient Buildings. In addition, we have an invaluable team of volunteers who undertake many conservation-based activities, such as monitoring humidity and temperature controls, helping us with locks, and conserving brassware.
One of our core ambitions is to secure a sustainable future for Wentworth Woodhouse. In practice, this means finding new uses for old features that are commercially viable, and that provides opportunities for individuals and communities to engage with us.
A good example of this is the regeneration of our wonderful Camellia house into a global tea room and event space. We protected our historic Camellia collection whilst the building work was underway. The work includes the creation of a rainwater harvesting system, a ground source heating system, and a changing places toilet. These are larger, accessible toilets with equipment such as hoists, curtains, adult-sized changing benches, and space for carers. It'll help make Wentworth Woodhouse even more accessible to our visitors.
Work has also started on the creation of a new car park and visitor entrance route to Wentworth Woodhouse. As you can see, we've demolished the old 1970s swimming pool and classroom buildings, and the site will become a 200-space car park with a new entrance route through to take visitors to the stables and from there to the house and gardens. It's a major game changer for our visitor experience and should be completed by the summer of 2023. In the few short years since we acquired Wentworth Woodhouse, we've taken huge strides to conserve and protect this internationally important site. And we've already made a real difference to the lives of thousands of people who've engaged with us. And this is just the beginning. Our plans for the coming years are even more ambitious, and we're really pleased that you're sharing in this fascinating journey with us.